Good morning. It's about 9:30 where I am. A little early to be playing rhythm changes, but somebody requested that I make a little video about my thoughts on playing rhythm changes, especially now considering that I've been telling you about playing without looking. So I was trying to do a bit of that. I warmed up before the video a little bit. That tempo now was 200 beats per minute, which is sort of maybe an average tempo for rhythm changes. A lot of students I have are a little bit afraid of playing rhythm changes at, let's say, jam sessions, because it's often played so fast. And that's, of course, a big danger, that we put tunes like standards in certain categories, that they're always played fast, for example. Now, that's not actually true. If you go back to the origins of rhythm changes, it's I Got Rhythm by Gershwin, and it's a Broadway musical tune. Actually, it had 34 bars in its original version, but the jazz version that people play on and that the bebop musicians also wrote themes on is a 32-bar form, A-A-B-A. As you're probably aware, the A section is a collection of turnarounds around the B-flat tonal center. So we've got so those chords, I mean, there's a lot of information on the internet. You can certainly find out what a typical rhythm changes progression is, but there are variations. Okay, so what we've got is the tonic chord, which could be a major 7. And it could also be a dominant 7. I mean, the dominant chord has a blues sort of character to it, and the major 7 is sweeter. All right, so we've got a turnaround, basically 1, 6, 2, 5, which is, I mean, I don't want to get into too much depth here, because it's I mean, everybody should be familiar with some sort of rhythm changes. What I want to talk about is how to play around the tonal center. Now, those are just scale degrees, 1, 6, 2, 5. So if we're playing in that sort of state of frame of mind, let me slow it down now. This is like just the A section played at 100 beats. We don't have to worry about the single chords here. If we're playing in the tonal center, it's sort of all B flat, with one exception. In bar 5, it definitely does change to B flat 7, and then bar 6 could go to E flat 7. That's the blues approach, or it could go to E flat major 7. Then there's different variations. Quite a common one is a diminished chord wait a minute, and then the diminished, and then the tonic again, sometimes with F as the bass note. So we've got bar 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then back to this 6, 2, 5. All right, so if we're playing very simple in terms of not using too many different scales and stuff, we just have to concentrate on playing that movement B flat 7 to E flat major, and the E diminished chord. Well, a diminished chord has, of course, minor thirds in the arpeggio. Often diminished chords represent dominant chords. In this case, I would say it's an A7 chord. Why A7? What's that got to do with the B flat rhythm changes? Well, an A7 chord could lead us to D minor, which is the third step of B flat, and that makes up our turnaround then. So we've got E flat 7, E flat major 7, and then A7, and then the turnaround 3, 6, 2, 5. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking now, just these simple chords, and the A section now we've got it down into 100 beats per minute. How do you play around a total center? Well, first you've got to know your triad. So that's this B flat. And it could be in different positions. You've got to try and sort of get this in your imagination. I mean, it's a very important thing to play triads. Then we play around them. We can play from below. That's called targeting, from below. Now again, try not to look at it, because you should be able to grab those notes just out of your imagination. And then you can also approach or target a note from the triad from above. It's usually diatonic, not always. If you play the fifth from a half step up, it sounds like a flat 9, F7 flat 9, resolving to the fifth on the B flat. So that's sort of a typical bebop or jazz color, the flat 9. So yeah, practice playing these targeting things from below and from above. Or with the flat 9. Okay, and it's, of course, one of the things is chromatics. So maybe you're familiar with a theme called Blue Monk. So that's a perfect example of chromatic resolution from the third, the fifth, third of E flat 7, fifth, and then B flat 9. All right, so there's a lot of things we can grab from like jazz themes that have been written over rhythm changes. I mean, I Got Rhythm, probably the least played theme in jazz history, although it's, of course, the basis of the changes here. So what's I Got Rhythm? Well, back in those days when Gershwin was writing, I guess he was revolutionizing jazz harmony, and also rhythm was part of it. Rhythm is actually the most important part. So he started with 2, that was the accent one. 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 So again, that's an old tune from the 20s, I guess. And the jazz musicians, of course, advanced. A very interesting theme is one that's supposed to have been written by a Thelonious Monk called Rhythming, although there is some debate about that. Some people say it was written by Mary Lou Williams or even by Charlie Christian, who was one of the pioneer jazz guitarists. And it's this... So that's the A section. Now you hear the triad in the B flat, and they're all quarter notes. So even if you play quarter notes, that can be considered rhythm. It's about how you phrase them. They have to groove. And also we've got the 7. So it's a bluesy sound on the rhythm changes. And so learn a few of those themes. Of course, Charlie Parker, played rhythm changes because it was a familiar chord progression at that time, and his themes, anthropology and Moose the Mooch, for example, they're typical examples of bebop, which have more notes in them than, for example, rhythming. Oleo is a good one from Sonny Rollins. It's a very rhythmical tune. So Sonny's using here like laying a 3/4 over a 4/4, ba da da ba ba da ba ba da. I mean, of course, he chops it up a bit, but that's the basic idea here, to superimpose a 3/4 rhythm on top of the 4/4 groove. So you should be familiar with a few of these themes because they've got a lot of rhythmical and harmonic input in them, content I meant. So now, again, listen to also soloists, been telling you in other lessons about learning a language. Well, this language here is, you say swing jazz, that's when they started playing rhythm changes, or of course bebop. And, just listen to some soloists, listen to the lines they're playing. And when I play something, I've got all this sort of in my head, and that sort of helps me to come up with some sort of improvisation. Also use rests, don't always play, although that is also an interesting concept, to be able to always play eighth notes. Somebody like Joe Pass, in his guitar style book, he's a fan of creating continuous eighth lines, which is like a Bach, composition that's continuous with counterpoint. But anyway, we don't want to stress out too much. So first of all, it's just about playing melodies and concentrating on the tonal center. So I'll just improvise a bit now on the A section. So the A section is played twice in rhythm changes. There's a slight difference between the first A section and the second A section. The first A section doesn't have to resolve to B flat. You often hear it just turning around with that sort of progression at the end, last two bars. But the second A section resolves to B flat, because that needs to be wound up, that idea. Because the B section is, of course, a cycle of fifths. Right, now in the basic version, it's 2 bars, D7, 2 bars G7, 2 bars C7, 2 bars F7, which leads us back to the final A section, which you could say is like the first A section. It doesn't have to resolve because we're going back to the first A. Okay, so in the B section, it's a completely different tune. It's not anything to do with playing around a tonal center. Each chord in the B section is a separate entity. Dominant chords, as you know, come in different shapes and colors. You could play a very simple dominant sound with a 9, but whatever you play, you should be able to transpose it to the other the other chords in the progression. So we've got also G7, C7, F7. Playing scales, of course, that's always an option, and so on. But there are no melodies, so again, we've got a problem here. If we just play scales, it's not going to really sound like we're playing the music. Right, so try to think about the chords. We've got a D7, and of course there's a triad, but a flat 7. So you can also add that as your one of your target notes, which in this case is a C. It's okay to lead chromatically into it, because what counts is where you land and not how you get there. That's the G7, and just continue on. Again, by listening to jazz recordings, to soloists, you get a lot of examples of how people approach this. How do they actually play on changes? Sometimes you hear a lot of space. So now we're back at the last A section. But again, you've got to play the B section as a separate entity, because it's actually not anything to do with the first part of the tune. All right, so I'll just play a bit on the B section. Okay, now rhythm changes is of course part of the jazz repertoire, so there's many tunes written on rhythm changes, and they all have something, of course, in common. They've got this connection to the changes, either rhythmically or hopefully melodically, and so it's very important to know some of those themes I just mentioned, Anthropology or Moose the Mooch. There's other tunes also. Just learn a few, because in those melodies, in those themes, a lot of interesting things, rhythmical and harmonical ideas. And then again, take it apart so that you can see what's actually happening, why for example, things sound good. We've got Anthropology. Haven't played it for a while, but that's a rhythmical thing. Dut 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 dee 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 dee. I think Charlie Parker was also influenced a lot by the Cuban rhythms that were just starting to become part of jazz. At that time he wrote a tune called My Little Suede Shoes, and here we hear like a sort of a bongo type rhythm, and he also wrote a tune called Bongo Bop. So that's a rhythmic component of bebop. And what else we hear? We hear the we're inputting changes in from the key of B flat, E flat and F. Of course, that'd be E flat and F7, and playing around them. It's B flat 7. That's the E flat. F7. And resolving back to the tonic. So anyway, when we've got all this together, like the B section, another thing you might find, some tunes like Oleo, there's no actual melody in the B section because they might have been a little bit lazy to write one, or they just said, let's leave it up to the soloist to improvise there. Okay, well, again, improvising is okay if you know, if you're familiar with it. So treating this cycle of fifths in the B section, learn your arpeggios and be able to connect them without starting always on the root note, and also bring in things like the 9. So if you're playing D7 9, it's actually the parallel third F sharp half diminished, or minor 7 flat 5. So then transpose that to G7 and you'll get a B minor 7 flat 5. And C7 9 is E. F7 9 is A. That's one color, the 9. Also, the flat 9 is cool. You know, the chromatic movement. Great thing about the dominant 7 flat 9 is this diminished upper structure, diminished 7 chord, is its symmetry. So again, we've talked about in playing blues that the tritone goes down a half step. Well, it's also the same with the diminished upper structure. Okay, so that's just an interesting thing. If we single out the diminished upper structure, that it's always going chromatically down. Or a whole step up is also interesting. Or a mixture of the two. All right, now I've got a faster version. I think I was playing at the beginning of this lesson a tempo 200, and once you get familiar with all this stuff, of course our next goal is to be able to play faster tempos. So it's not that we have different material now, it's just moving faster, right? So Once you've got an idea what you can play on an A section, stick with the A section, just increase the tempo. That's the good thing about these sort of sequence things. I'm using Logic, but you can just make your own little audio files and speed them up in a lot of different software. Transcribe is very good for that. And yeah, and then as I said, the content doesn't change, but of course you have to work on your technique to be able to play the lines at faster tempos. So I'm going to take it out now with the tempo up at 240, which is of course not the limit, but it's considerably faster than when I started at 200. So hope you got something out of this, and I'll see you soon.